Hello and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the What's Up Wednesday, Story and Strategy, a Library Con webinar with Caele Pemberton and Ben Rutz from the Kokomo-Howard County Public Library. This webinar is being co-sponsored by the American Library Association's Games and Gaming Roundtable. My name is George Bergstrom, and I'm the Southern Regional Coordinator for the Indiana State Library's Professional Development Office, and I'll be the question moderator for today. I'd like to start off the webinar with a few quick announcements. To register for other webinars or other trainings that are available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library. And GameRT would like everyone to know that their March Minicon theme this year is Gaming Outside the Box. The Minicon is going to be held on March 20th, 2026, from 9 to 5 p.m. Central Time, and I'll drop a link in the chat for more details. Today's session is 1 hour, so you can receive 1 LEU. If you are watching the archived recording of this webinar, the instructions on how to obtain your LEU are available in the video's description on YouTube. Or you can also find the instructions on the Indiana State Library's continuing education site under the LEU policies. I'll now turn it over to Caele and Ben.
Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to talk to you about our library con. As George mentioned, I'm Caele Pemberton.
Oh, and I'm Ben Rutz, and we had a blast with our library con, so we are super excited to share our experiences with you all today.
Yes. Just to go over kind of our agenda here, we are going to talk about who we are and our library system. We're going to talk about the idea for LibraryCon, kind of how this came about, how we started planning, all the different elements that we wanted, what worked really well, and then some of the things that didn't work really well. And we're going to wrap up by telling you our plan for this year's LibraryCon. We are, like we said, from the Kokomo-Howard County Public Library. We're also really huge nerds, and we've both been to Gen Con 6 times now. This presentation, actually, we gave it at Gen Con in 2025. We regularly host Dungeons and Dragons events, and I'll let Ben kind of tell you a little bit about what he does for the library with that.
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of those. We'll go into detail about some of the events that we've hosted in the past. Of Dungeons and Dragons, tabletop role playing, all kinds of stuff like that. We'll talk about that here in just a bit. But the big thing is we've been doing nerdy related events for a while, and so we started, or at least I started hosting them back in 2021 with the Dungeons and Dragons events, and we quickly realized that there was a large community in the area that was really interested in events like that. And so ultimately that was what led us to deciding that we were going to host a library con here at our library system.
A little bit about our library. We are in kind of mid-central Indiana, about an hour north of Indianapolis. We have 3 locations and 2 bookmobiles. We serve about 77,000 people in our taxing district. And a lot of our events draw people from surrounding counties as well. Each of our different locations kind of brings a different strength. So Ben oversees the makerspace at our main location. Our South Branch, we have a really great outdoor stage and a butterfly garden. And then our Rocheville branch is very community driven. So pretty much everyone in Rocheville goes to the library. They love it. It's just, it really gives that community library feel.
And it's literally like in a neighborhood, kind of one of those libraries. So it's a super cute library. But one of the things that we are always thinking about is how often, I mean, so a patron will go to one branch and that will be the place that they go. So we're always trying to find different ways to be able to attract people to branches that would be outside of their normal comfort zone. And so that's also part of the what we're going to talk about today with LibraryCon.
Well, and I'll touch on that too, because we see a lot of people from Rushville only go to Rushville's library. We see people go to the main or south branch, but they never come to Rushville. They never get out there. So we really wanted to be intentional and try to encourage people to get to a location that they don't normally see. Um, so yeah, I'll let Ben, dive a little bit more deeply into what we've done here at the library for our nerdy community.
Yeah, so back in 2021, I started hosting Dungeons and Dragons events, and right away it got really, really popular. We started out with a choose your own adventure style event that was a um, it was kind of like the human library, where you get like a little synopsis of what the adventure was going to be, and then you choose the dungeon master or the game master that you want to work with, and then ultimately you end up going and you play the game together. And we ended up meeting some local vendors in the community at that event. We ended up meeting our local game shop, who ended up becoming instrumental in planning further games. We did a 12-hour lock-in that started at 8 o'clock on a Friday Friday night. It was a Saturday night and into Sunday, but it was 12 hours, so all night long. And there was about 70 patrons in attendance of just nonstop Dungeons and Dragons mega dungeon kind of style event. We've done a player versus player PvP style where everybody's just fighting each other until one person is left. That one was really popular. The lock-in was probably our most popular event, and people have been begging us to do it again, but I don't know.
It was really rough.
It
It
was a
was
lot.
hard on the DMs and the volunteers. It was really
Yeah,
hard.
yeah, yeah. So it was tough. People loved it though, which is great. I'm glad about that. But people loved the PvP as well. But then we really started focusing in on trying to make these Dungeons and Dragons and TTRPG events more focused on the literature that we're trying to expose to people at the library, as well as kind of the different initiatives that we've got going on. So, Kaylee, you hosted this cozy adventure that was based on Legends and Lattes, which is
Mhm.
we have, at the Kokomo-Howard County Public Library, we have something called Howard County Reads, which is a list of books that, we're trying to encourage the community to all join in and read together. And so we made an adventure that was similar to one of those books. So it was not combat related at all. It was all just, you're making a coffee shop, and you're just trying to make sure that that's successful, just like the book, right? And similar to that, we had another book on our Howard County Reads list a couple years ago. Kaiju #8, the manga was really popular at the time. And so we were trying to capitalize on that. And we did a big kaiju kind of style event called Battle of the Trask, where everybody's fighting this one big giant Godzilla monster. And that was pretty successful. And we actually did two events kind of back to back, for that as well. And then we hosted an event that we're going to be bringing back again. This year we did an all Rangers themed event that was based on our camping themed summer reading program. And so that was really popular, and people got really into the camping theme that we had a couple years ago. And so with our summer reading program being dinosaurs themed this year, we're going to be doing an all barbarian caveman style event. It's just fun to be able to, kind of use the things that we're doing at the library to be able to include that into those campaigns. We did actually create we've actually created all of these. We had a question here. Did you mention if you created the one shot from Legends and Lattes, or did you purchase or did the title if you purchased it? We actually, all of the adventures that we have run here at the library, we made up. So either Kaylee, myself, or a volunteer made up all of the programs that we've done, and there's actually a lot more than we have listed here. But if you are interested in any of those, at the end of the presentation, we will have our contact information. So please feel free to reach out to one of us, and we'd be happy to share with you all of the materials that we have for each of those events.
And Legends and Lattes and everything else was made with D&D 5e. I mean, especially with the Legends and Lattes, I think you could translate it pretty easily to another system that's a little less combat heavy in general, but
Sure, Kids on Bikes, is gaining popularity from all the Stranger Things stuff that came out earlier this year. But yeah, there's a lot of tabletop role playing games. The main reason why we stick for our TTRPGs with just Dungeons and Dragons mostly is because it's got the recognition value. People know that, and so they know what they're getting when they come in. Even though oftentimes we kind of do rules light related stuff.
right. And I do highly recommend reading Legends and Lattes and the whole series. It is super cute and cozy and just very feel good. I love it. And it drew a new crowd of people in too that don't want to, they don't want to fight. They don't want that combat. So we saw new people come in for that, which was nice. The idea for Kokomo-Con or Library Con actually came from Gen Con. We attended Trade Day a few years ago, and I listened to a presenter who was talking about fundraisers for her library. And she very briefly talked about that they hosted a Library Con as a fundraiser. So we kind of brought that back. I think I probably messaged Ben like right then and there, we're like, hey, we have to do this.
Yes.
Yeah, so we got
You
back.
did.
We immediately started talking about what that would look like. And we talked to our assistant director. He's a big nerd. He plays a lot of D&D. He has been involved in some of the library things that we've done in the past. And I knew if we got him on board with the idea, then we could get everybody else on board, kind of with his blessing to move forward. And we decided not to do it as a fundraiser, even though that was the presentation that I attended. We just figured we would open it up and make it free for everybody, including vendors. Especially for our first time, we just wanted to see if it would be successful, if there was interest in it. So we did not raise any money for it. We formed a committee made up of people from our different branches because right away we knew we wanted to do this at every location. And we'll get into that. It was very ambitious. So, stick with us here. But we had a committee from everyone who was involved in the branches and then anyone who was particularly passionate about gaming at the library.
Yeah, and it was really helpful, with the people that were working the event were the people that were passionate about this sort of thing, and that really translated to the patrons as well, because if you have people that are really passionate about this hobby, it is something that the patrons pick up on as well, and it just kind of elevates the experience.
There was one stakeholder in particular we really wanted to touch base with, the owner of Comics Cubed in Kokomo. He used to run Kokomo-Con at the big event center in town that no longer operates as an event center. So when they stopped operating as an event center, he didn't have a space to do it. And we just haven't seen that level of a con in town since then. So I approached him. I said, here's what we want to do. It's going to be, really focused on the library, but I want to make sure we're not stepping on your toes. Again, kind of looking for your blessing because I don't want to compete. I don't want to, annoy you or kind of burn any bridges. And he was very excited and on board and definitely seemed very supportive of the whole thing. So we were really glad about that as well.
And he was actually involved in the event as well, and and part of the reason why it was a success. Oh, I spoiled it. It was a success.
Yes, yeah. Uh-oh. We very carefully chose the date that we went with. We didn't want to compete with any of our other really big events. We did not want to do it during summer reading program. That seemed way too ambitious. And the people here who plan our summer reading program did not want us to do that either. So we chose it for May 17th last year. This year it's going to be May 16th, so same weekend. Again, we talked to local stakeholders to find out, are there any huge magic tournaments, which the answer is we don't know. Are there any other regional cons that we need to be on the lookout for? We don't want to, compete if the toy store is going to be going to a con in Ohio you know, we don't want to split their focus. So that was something to keep in mind. So I talked about how we didn't want to compete. We needed to secure the spaces. So again, we did this at every location. So right away, we went ahead and booked every single meeting room, every available space. We didn't want patrons or staff to book something in the rooms if we were planning to use it. And then along the way, if we didn't need that space, we could let it go. But we did need every inch of space that we reserved. We used as much space as we could possibly get. We needed everyone to kind of support the idea as well. It was a big ask, you know, hey, can we take over your whole branch for the week, for the, you know, this whole day? And thankfully, everyone was really supportive of it. And we knew we needed help from our community members and our volunteers and our, you know, the organizations and businesses that we work with as well.
Absolutely. This would not have been possible without local volunteers. And actually, coming up in a couple of slides, there is a list of all of the events that we did throughout the con. And there's a dice that is sitting right next to some of those events. And each of the events that have a dice next to it, that is the ones that were led by or you're strongly, you know, influenced by volunteers. And so you'll see that coming up here in just a little bit. But we had a lot of volunteers that were instrumental in making the event the way that it was, in it being a success.
And it was important for us to think through any event that we wanted to do. We had to know if we had the capacity to do it as staff or if we knew a community member who might be willing to do it. And if we didn't, we just couldn't do it. We really, really wanted to have a comic book demonstration, and we know a local comic creator, but we just couldn't get him to confirm with us. So unfortunately, we couldn't do that because no one on our staff is an expert at that.
Right.
So we did have to drop some of the things that we really wanted to do.
But when it came to the volunteers, this is again not the first time that we've hosted an event like this, or an event that has been heavily influenced by volunteers. And so most of the volunteers that we had were people that have been working with us for a long time, you know, because, you know, they're passionate about the hobby of gaming, and so they just wanted to be included.
So actually pulling it together, we started with a mission statement. We felt like this was going to help us drive the work and why we were doing this. So our mission statement was the Library Con will use storytelling, gaming, and creating to engage new users while highlighting library services, programs, and collections. And every part of that mission statement was important to us. We really did want to highlight our collections. So we thought about, you know, can we have book displays that are tied into the different things? So during the cosplay workshop, we had a cosplay display, which I didn't realize we had so many cosplay books in our collection, but thankfully we did. And just kind of helping people understand the different things that we offer here at the library. Starting with the planning and the actual implementation of this, we made a list of all the individual events and pared it down from there. We were working with limited space, so we couldn't do everything we wanted, even if we had volunteers to help us. We identified those volunteers. We talked about incentives to get people to come, like prizes and different ways to kind of drum up that excitement. And then the promotion, how we were going to get the word out about it. We have a lot of different avenues for that, and we will kind of talk about that a little bit more. But our committee was working really hard behind the scenes to pull this all together and reach out and make contact with people and nail down those individual elements of the con.
So yeah, as we mentioned, the Library Con was spread across all three of our locations, and we're going to get into some more detail about each of those events. But just for the couple pictures here, so this is each location. The bottom left is our main branch, the middle one is our south branch, and then the one on the right is our Rocheville, our very small branch. The one in the lower left, that was a like a game master panel where we had experienced dungeon masters, game masters come in and talk about their experience, and that was very popular. A lot of people were really interested in learning more about how to become a game master. And yeah, that was it was kind of a sold out standing, not sold out, but you know, the space was completely full, standing room in the back kind of deal. So people really enjoyed that. In the middle there, we had our cosplay contest, which we'll talk more about this in a little bit. We had some weather issues during the event where it was really windy outside. And because of that, we moved the cosplay contest inside. But fortunately, the wind did not stop the folks who were really into live action role play. That was LARP out at our small branch. We have an outdoor class. It's called the Nature Explorer Outdoor Classroom out there, which has like a cool naturey kind of feel to it. So we thought that that could be a really fun opportunity for LARPers to really get into it and kind of use that for their setup. But they had a great time out there, as you can see from the picture there, and we'll go into more detail about the rest of our programs.
So as been mentioned, everything with a die next to it is an event that either an organization or a volunteer oversaw for us. So we didn't run that ourselves. You know, of course, we provided the staff support, but we had so much help, and we were so grateful because everything that doesn't have the die next to it, that's what we could do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but let's go ahead and go in individually and start talking about each of the programs. Starting with the top one, you led this one. Let's talk about the virtual author visit. Who was it? Where was it? How did it? Let's go into that.
Yeah. We had Maureen Johnson. If you haven't read anything from her, she writes some murder mysteries, very fun, engaging. I highly recommend you check her out. She's young adult. And we were so excited. We had actually done a podcast episode with her in the past, so she was excited to join us again. We just hoped that that would drum up some excitement for the beginning of the day. It didn't go very well. We had a very low attendance and we had some technical issues, which were, you know, it was not a good way to start the day on for me at least, but she was such a good sport about it, and our attendees were good sports as well. We won't be doing the author visit again just because it didn't draw enough attention.
We did a cosplay contest, which we had a volunteer who is actually like a professional costume designer for local theater in our community come in and teach about ways to be able to make like these really elaborate costumes, not just for spending. I mean, you can spend buku money to be able to make crazy stuff, but she was talking about it on a budget, and even ways to be able to fix costumes when they don't go or when things start to break in the middle of the convention. So it was a really well attended and super awesome workshop that we had there. I led a 3D printing for cosplay event that it was at the beginning of the day, so it wasn't the best attended. But what we learned, we'll talk more about this later, but the 10 a.m. start time that we had, we think maybe it was a little early, and so maybe a little later in the day we would have caught some more people because we had a lot of people come in and ask us about it after the event was already over. They were like, "Oh, is like the 3D printing is that still going on?" I'm like, "Well, that just ended." But we talked about do I still have it here? No, I don't have it in front of me. We made like little like devil horns and things like that for but we made Fallout like the Nuka-Cola props. We made stuff from Baldur's Gate 3 that was really popular. The I don't know if it was called a Tesseract, but it was like a D20 looking big thing, and we made that and a bunch of other things that you would carry around with you if you were at a convention. And we talked about painting those, printing them, and kind of care and things like that. As I mentioned, we had that GM panel where we had local dungeon masters who were experienced come in and talk to people about what that meant to or how to be a game master and some tips and tricks and things like that. That was really popular. Miniature painting we do on a regular basis anyway, and it's fine. It's not a crazy popular, but it's a low effort program that we were just like, we'll just throw that in there. It's pretty easy. But that overwhelmed me with how popular it was. The room that we put it in was not nearly large enough to be able to hold the amount of people that were dying to get in. So we like ran out of chairs and we're just like pulling stuff from other places in the library. And I was totally overwhelmed trying to run that by myself. And I fortunately was able to pull in another coworker to help me because, I mean, when I expected, I mean, normally on a regular basis, we have like 5 to 8 people come in for something like this. But when we had like 25 plus people in trying to all paint at the same time, it was like, ah.
And
But
you
that was
ran out
amazing.
of paint too,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah. So I was pulling from other arts and crafts locations and stuff at the library, but it went too well.
Yeah.
There. Kids
We
on
had
bikes. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a volunteer dungeon master. We kind of threw it out to our group chat and said, "Do you want to run anything?" So we had someone say they wanted to run Kids on Bikes. Love that. It is becoming a much more popular system that we're seeing. And then we had a volunteer say they wanted to run a Pokemon tabletop role-playing game. So we did those. We did require registration for those, just because it was limited space at the table.
Yeah, just an FYI though, if you do require registration for a small number of things, so I mean that game only ran for 4 people, but 3 of the people that registered for that event didn't come, and so it was just like one guy that was there ready to play, but it required more than that. Fortunately, some other random people ended up coming in, and so the event ended up being a success. But that was a little bit of a scary, like, oh no, what do we do, kind of thing. So that's kind of the thing about having registration for low numbers of people, how that can sometimes go not super well. We did board games. We actually talked to our local game store, and they were so generous. They brought out 8 different board games that they had set up, and all of the volunteers on multiple shifts to be able to run them throughout the whole day. And so, I mean, that was completely self-sustaining. The game store and all of their volunteers. I mean, there were probably 12 people at least down in that section. That was super successful, and we're excited to have them back doing that again. But it was a pretty big undertaking and a big ask, but they came through and it was awesome. Do you want
We
to talk
had
about the
a
stuff
vendor
itself?
hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started the day out there with a vendor hall, and we reached out to all the local shops that offer miniatures and games and comics and toys and anything that felt like a good fit. We were really strategic about who we asked. So we didn't necessarily put it out there publicly, but we did reach out to specific groups. And we had some artists as well, and we had a couple of informational tables where, because of the space limitations, I don't think we're going to do informational tables again at the con this year. But we were happy to be able to offer that space last time. We did book discussions because, again, that mission statement, we did want to highlight, what we do at the library, and really a big part of what libraries do is literacy. But they didn't go well. Very, very low attendance. I think one of them didn't have anyone come at all. So we will not be doing this again. We're gonna switch gears and focus on some different things, but we won't be doing the book discussions again.
We had a volunteer who in our community runs Werewolf at the local game store, and so coincidentally, it happens to be their night that they were already going to be doing that, and so we asked him if he would run Werewolf for our convention. And he so graciously was willing to do it, but he ended up running Werewolf from like 10 a.m. when we started until 4, and then left and then went to the game store where he ran it again that night. So he was running it for like 12 hours that day. It's kind of a ridiculous ask,
But
but
he loves it. He wanted to
he
do
loved
it.
it. And it was successful. It was great. People loved it. So,
Lacey
want to talk
has a
about? Oh,
Oh,
Lacey
sorry.
has,
You had
sorry.
a question?
no worries. Lacey has a question. How long did it take from that Gen Con inspiration to the actual first con?
Yeah, well, Gen Con was with the one that we got this idea from was August of 2024, and then we did the con in May of 2025. So it was a quick turnaround, I think, especially when you're doing these big annual events. You kind of want to start having an idea, like a year out. we pulled it off. We did make it work. You know, after the con in 25, we did sit down and say what worked and what didn't work. What do we want to do again next year? Did we even want to do it again next year? And that was a pretty easy answer because we had a really overwhelmingly positive response. So
Yeah.
that
And
gave us a
everybody that
year.
came was just like, please do it again, please, please. So
Mhm.
we're like, all right, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we started talking about it right away after the Gen Con, and we actually started that committee of people here at our library pretty shortly after that and started
Mhm.
having those conversations. So, you know, we really hit the ground running immediately, and we took that time to plan the event.
We did a cosplay contest, and we were gonna do it outside on our nice, beautiful stage. But the wind was so intense. Indiana wind can be no joke for sure. So we ended up moving it inside, which wasn't ideal. We have accounted for that a little bit better for this year. But we didn't want anyone's like cosplay elements to go flying off in the wind. So, um, and
Do
we
you want
had
to
a
talk about
volunteer.
do you want to talk about the volunteer that
Yeah.
ran cosplay?
He did cosplay contests for Kokomo-Con back when that was being run. So I reached out and said, hey, you're the expert. Will you come in and help run this? And he was excited to do it. Which I think, you know, if you don't have someone in your community who is ready to do that, you can absolutely do it. Yeah, I think it would help to have a little committee of judges to figure out who wins. I didn't want to be the only one deciding who was going to win because there's so many good costumes. But if you can scrounge up like 3 or 4 judges, that would be great. At Rocheville, we did a LARP and we had the local LARP group come in. They were excited to do that. We specifically asked if they would go to the smaller branch because we wanted to get people out there during the day. This time around, they've told us that they would prefer to be at our south branch. It has a much bigger field and it's just a little more visible. So we're gonna have them out at our south branch. We had a staff member run video games, not great attendance, but it was just a fun little addition out there. And then that kind of after hours, so after the main part of the con, we really drove people out to our Rocheville branch for Dungeons and Dragons and an outdoor movie night. Which was the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Love that movie. It's so much fun. We did advertise it as PG-13, but I would not recommend this if you are hoping to draw, you know, people of all ages. There's more cursing in that movie than I remembered. So as we were sitting there with like young kids watching, I was like, oh, this might have been a bad idea.
Yeah, especially like an outdoor movie in a neighborhood late at night as they're all like, "Yeah," you know, they're saying, you know, bad words. I'm like, oh no. But, you know, the people that came, they had a great time with it. And so, but yeah, our that small branch is the only branch that has the license to be able to play outdoor movies. And they were getting ready to start their outdoor movie series, and so that this kind of kicked that off
Mhm.
for them. So altogether, the actual hours of the event was 10 to 4, but then the after hours started back up at 5 and then went until the mid outdoor movie was over around midnight. So the whole event was you know, from 10 to midnight. So it was it was long.
It was a
But it
very
was
long
great.
day.
Everybody had a great time. We had a great
Yeah.
time. And Dungeons and Dragons was a humongous success.
Oh
The
my gosh, that branch is tiny and we were bursting at the seams to the point that they were like, should we set up tables outside? We made it work inside, but that was something we were considering.
Yeah, kind of
And
overwhelming amount. But I mean the volunteer that ended up running the event went way overboard on the stuff. I mean, he ended up 3D printing like all these big terrain pieces and models and stuff. And so it was like one of the more epic gaming experiences I've ever had. But it really made it a blast. Lastly, we did have some food trucks that were out there. We had a food truck out at each branch. And they were actually a big draw for people. Some people were like, "Oh, I just came out here for the food truck, and now I'm staying for the fun," which was also great. And hey, whatever gets you in the door.
yeah,
But the one out at our Rocheville branch went the extra mile, and this food truck flavored all of their food like themed around nerdy stuff, and so that was really fun.
They had
They
like a
sold out.
hero's brunch and potion of strength, which was just like juice, but
Yeah, yeah. Really fun, and they had snacks and stuff for Dungeons and Dragons that night, and so yeah, it was just all together. It was a lot of fun.
yeah. We've talked so much about all the volunteers that we've used. We just could not have pulled this off without them. We used basically every connection that we have. Thankfully, we have really good relationships with the nerdy community because we're both, big gamers, and we frequent their shops a lot, and we're very connected to them. So if you're going to go down this route, I highly recommend you start to make those connections with them on a personal level, if that's possible for you. That really helped us quite a bit. We had a punch card because again, we really wanted to encourage people to get to every location. So we had punch cards that if they got all 3 locations punched, they got a little prize. All the prizes were donated by our local toy store, and our comic book shop. And then we had some hoopla goodies as well, which were also really fun. Um, the punch cards went fairly well. We did have an older gentleman who does not game, doesn't understand anything about this world at all, very confused by it, but he wanted to get his card punched. So he went to all 3 locations. He stayed for a couple workshops, and he got his prize. And then afterward, he was like, I didn't understand what you were talking about, but I thought it was fun. So that was great.
Yeah. But this was our way of trying to encourage people to go to all of our locations, was to have that punch card. And a lot of people did. A lot of people got those prizes. So
Promotion wise, we are very fortunate to have an in-house graphic artist. She designed the cover of our printed newsletter, which goes out to everyone in our taxing district. And I just love the cover so much. I think that was so epic. Of course, we used social media quite a bit. We used local press, so we sent some press releases to the local paper and the radio stations, posters and flyers at the different places that we work with. So Ben takes stuff around to the game store and anywhere else that feels like a good fit for this. Word of mouth was also really big. We're very tuned into the local individual gamers and dungeon masters, so they helped us spread the word as well. And then some forums online, Reddit, Discord, just some light promotion there because we know that there are some gamers in those channels. So that helped us reach a few extra people. We're going to talk about some of the things that went really, really well, and then we'll get into some of the things that didn't go well. But starting with the treasure, we had approximately 350 people attend the event throughout the day, which, we were happy with. We didn't really have a number in mind when we started. I'd love to see that number jump up for 2026, so we'll see how that goes. We strengthened some relationships with some of our vendors and volunteers. People were excited to be asked to set up a vendor table, and they were excited that we didn't charge them. Some of them were really confused by that. So they were ready to pay if we needed them to, but that first year we did not ask for that. We drew new people to the library, and we know that because we had casual conversations throughout the day, just kind of asking people, how did you hear about this? Why did you come? We had a guy who had just moved to Kokomo a few weeks prior, and he was looking to meet new people. He didn't know anyone in town, and he said this was exactly what he needed, just to kind of get in touch with people who were interested in the same things as he was. We had really positive feedback from everyone who attended, and like we've mentioned, we had a lot of requests to bring it back this year, and people really loved the food trucks, so we will be doing that again.
And with the food trucks, yeah, the lines. I mean, if you can even do more than one food truck, that might be a good idea because, at one point I didn't realize the food trucks would be as popular as they were. But I know that out at the main branch, my goodness, there was a huge line of people that were just excited to eat from this burger truck that was there. So I was like, hey, all right, that's awesome. But yeah, people had a good time.
Some of the things that didn't go so well, And there were quite a few things that we learned from. So scheduling didn't always work out. Starting at 10 a.m. was a little rough. Pretty much across the board, those 10 a.m. events just weren't very well attended. So we're actually going to be starting it at 11 a.m. this year, because it seemed like people were a little bit more engaged at that time.
Yeah, it was interesting how it continued to increase in attendance throughout the day. So, the doors opened and we were like, all right, where's everybody? 10 a.m., nobody. Then at 11 a.m. we had a pretty good amount of people there. And then 12 a.m. we had more, or 12 p.m. we had more. And then 1, there was more. And then 2, there was more. And then by the time that the event was over at 4, I mean, there was a ton of people here, but then we were like, all right, the event's over now.
Go to D&D, drive to Rushville, go to D&D. Yeah, because we were like, we'll try to make it work. We were already full on registration for that, but we were gonna do whatever we could to try to make it work if extra people showed up. The book discussions and the author visit were a flop, as we've mentioned. So just we're not even going to try that again. Do you want to talk about the volunteers?
Sure, yeah. So when it comes to volunteers, so like I mentioned, we've been doing volunteer related activities for a long time. So starting in 2021, and that whole time, I've always done the same thing. I've got a pretty good relationship with the local Domino's here in Kokomo, and so we always feed them just pizza, and they give us a really good nonprofit price. It's an affordable way to feed just a ton of people, and so that's worked out for us for a number of years. But for this one, because we had those food trucks, and we got a question, it looks like somebody's asking of us how we secured those food trucks. So we'll get into that here in just a minute. Because we had the food trucks, we thought, well, we don't want to take money away from the food trucks, and because we have so many volunteers, we can't necessarily afford to just pay for everybody to do it. So we let everybody know ahead of time. We're like, hey, there's going to be food trucks there. We're not going to provide any free food. But you're welcome to bring something if you don't want to eat with the food truck. But, because we have the food trucks coming, they're not going to do pizza like normal. And that did not go over quite as well as I had hoped. People were like, well, we're here all day. We expect to be fed because we're doing this for free. And I totally hear that. That's on us. And so we are shifting this year. We're basically going to be with the local vendors that we had for the vendor hall. We didn't ask them to pay anything to be a vendor. And almost all of them were like, oh, what? You're doing this for free? Like, okay. Well, so this year we're actually going to ask them to pay a little bit. And what we're going to do with that money is we're just going to basically transfer that to the food trucks to be able to pay for all of the vendors to be able to, or
Or
of
volunteers?
all the volunteers to be able to get that free meal from there. So that way they can. They don't have to prepare anything ahead of time, and they can just eat whatever's at the food trucks.
And the
So,
food trucks still see that business. We're not taking away from them.
yeah.
They did not ask us to give them any money. The food trucks that we pulled in, we're happy to be there. We've worked with most of them before. A couple of considerations if you do ask food trucks. We made sure to ask if they needed to hook up to our power, because some of our locations don't have the right kinds of outlets for their power needs. So if they did need that it wasn't going to work out. Thankfully, the ones we brought in either brought their own generators or, they made it work on their end. So you do want to think through those logistical things. And make sure you know where you're going to place them so that people can easily walk up and get food in a safe way, so they're not like standing in the street. You
As
want to
far as
think
how
through
to
all those.
secure those vendors, though, one of the people on our committee, that's actually the manager of the our small branch out at Rushville, is really engaged with that community. And so anytime that community has an event, there's food trucks out there, and this person is totally in the know of everything.
Mhm.
And so as far as how she built those relationships, I would imagine she just talked to them at other events and kind of built those relationships over time. So I would encourage you that if you see a food truck, or if you know of a business that is that has one, you talk to them and you let them know that either you're potentially interested in having them at another event, or just ask them if they do, what it would take to be able to get them out to an event that you would be having.
Indiana weather was a trap for us, and you just can't control that. So, I imagine if it had been really, really bad, yeah, and oh, I do want to comment on that. I did ask every food truck that we worked with if they had all their permits and everything through the health department. I personally, I'm going to ask that question every time. So, yes, that's a good point. Um, make sure if you're planning outdoor events, you do either have a backup plan, or if those events have to be canceled, be prepared for that. Travel between all the locations was a lot on our end. As staff, we had kind of thought like, oh, I'm going to leave the main location at this time and travel to Roosevelt, and then I'm going to leave Roosevelt at this time. That if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. None of that worked out. So that was a little too ambitious. And some of our patrons did not appreciate needing to travel to all locations to get that prize. They weren't valuable. Like they didn't cost a lot of money. So it wasn't like you were missing out on some special edition limited thing. But they did let us know that they didn't really want to do that.
But they did it anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the traveling between a bunch of branches throughout the day was, a little bit on the ambitious side. And the question, at the end, did we do too much? Basically, we had a ton of things going on all at the same time, all throughout the day at every branch. And so there were a lot of instances where people were really interested in attending multiple things at once, but they couldn't because of the time limitations. And so we have some plans that we're going to talk about for moving into 2026 to be able to address that.
So our next adventure is May 16th, and that is actually only going to take place at our South and Roosevelt locations. We are not going to do anything at our main branch. We see a lot of heavy traffic at Main anyway. People are coming in to use the computers and to print and to study. So we are going to leave that as a space for people to just do normal library business. And that way people won't have to travel between all three locations either. We did chat with some of our regular volunteers and vendors to kind of gauge what worked and what didn't, and we've made adjustments based on that feedback. Some of the individual things that we will be doing this year that are different and new. Like I said, we're moving LARP to the other location with a bigger field for them. We're going to do crafts throughout the day for all ages. We are going to do the cosplay contest at noon. That was one thing that we heard from the cosplayers. They wanted to be able to take their cosplay off after the contest. But when we did it at the very end of the day, they could, it was over.
They
at
basically
that
had to
point.
wear it the whole day if they were going to be, going to be able to come to everything that we had going on, which we didn't think about. But I mean, we've done cosplay before and we wore it the whole day. So, but I guess the stuff that we've worn isn't necessarily like the big robot in the picture that we had earlier. So I
The
imagine
power armor, yeah.
yeah. So
and we're going to do a parade around the branch, which, if you are there for regular library business, sorry, that's going to be a little bit obnoxious, but of course, again, we're opening up our other location just for normal library business. So, we are going to try, if you need to get some work done, that might be a better space for you on this particular day. We're going to have a passive Lego build, and someone at our South branch is picking out some good Lego sets for that. And then a Pokemon scavenger hunt. We saw something similar to this at the Hamilton East Library Con that we attended. And you basically just walked around the branch and tried to find the different characters. We're gonna have some books out too. So if you're not a Pokemon fan, you can, try to figure it out using the different materials that we have available. Last time we only did this for teens and adults. We really did not have anything for kids. We didn't market it for kids. But this year we're going to do live Mario Kart for kids in our children's stacks. And one of our children's people is going to run that for us. So,
and live Mario Kart is literally the kids are riding the little carts. Well, it's like little tricycles as they run over bananas and there's shells and stuff like that. It should be a cute thing.
and
So
she's done it before. It's always really popular. And then at our Rocheville branch, we're going to save everything at the Rocheville branch for the evening. We're going to start with trivia. That kind of gives people some time if they are traveling from south. You know, if they miss trivia, it's not the end of the world. But D&D will start right after that. And the outdoor movie night, we're going to try to show Shrek if we have the license for it. If not, we've got a number of movies that we are hoping are, you know, a little bit more kid friendly. No cursing for sure. We want to avoid that.
We got a question. What about libraries with only one location? I mean, honestly, I'd still would go as big as you could. And you know, for those people that come in for the library, you know, for normal things, I mean, of course they can still do that. But I mean, if they're trying to study on a Saturday when there's a ton of people playing games and being loud and stuff, it's like, well, you know, it's just the once. But I would go hard. I would try to use everything and go as big as you could. You know, with this. And so yeah, that would be my advice. Thoughts, Kaylee?
I mean, yeah, I love that we did it up big, and I love that we're going to do it up big at these two locations. Um, that is probably a conversation you want to have with your leadership, because of course you do serve so many different kinds of people. So you don't want to hurt that work that you guys do. So that's a conversation you should have with your leadership and kind of figure out if this is a good fit. I still think it's a lot of fun, and it draws a lot of new people into the library. So I think it's worth it for a once a year event, or even just a one-time thing. These are, you'll find our contact information at the bottom here. Ben is the supervisor of our makerspace services. So he was a great fit to lead some of those workshops, and I'm the director of marketing. Thankfully, our library is very good about allowing us to get involved in some programming, even if that's not our job, you know, as long as it doesn't interfere with the rest of the stuff that I do. So I was very lucky to be able to get involved in this. But yeah, we'd like to open it up to any questions you might have. We're very happy to answer whatever you might want to know.
And if we talked about anything that you would like some additional information on, please reach out to us, and we are more than happy to share that with you. So if you know, we talked a little bit about that cozy adventure from that was inspired by Legends and Lattes, and if you would like that, please just send either Kaylee or myself an email and just you know request whatever materials, and we'll send that your way.
Well, this was really great, guys. Very informative. I'll encourage everyone to go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat. We do have about 7 or so more minutes of the official time. We'll stay here as long as we can. If we do get flooded with questions, I will just capture them all out of the chat and send them to Kaylee and Ben, and we can get you those answers offline. So yeah, if you've got any questions. Here we are. Google Docs was working so hard, I think. Smoke started coming out of the keyboard. Ah, you guys are typing. How did you find vendors aside from the local shops?
Our local IU campus, IU Kokomo, they hosted a campus con a few years ago, and they had a lot of vendors. And I reached out to them at the time that I attended that. We did not have this in mind, so we didn't, you know, get their contact information. But I reached out to them and asked if they could provide me with the vendor list. And I had bought items at a few of those vendors, so I literally scrolled back through like my purchase, you know, receipts. And was like, oh, yeah, that's the name of this business that I really liked. I'm going to track them down. I think I used like Instagram to find them, and she was really excited to come. We already know a lot of the local shops in town, so we reached out to them directly. And then we opened it up to some local artists as well. And we attended a few different events. There's a card event that goes on a somewhat regular basis. So we went out there and we just kind of scoured their vendors. And we made sure that they knew we were doing that. We didn't want to cannibalize their work. And thankfully it didn't conflict. So I wanted them to know, hey, we're going to try to see if any of those vendors also want to attend our thing as well.
Yeah, and we actually went out to their event and advertised LibraryCon there, and we were a vendor.
Mhm.
So it was kind of a mutual assistance sort of deal. But
Sure.
yeah, I think honestly the easiest way to find vendors is to just kind of be a patron of those events. Whenever there's another nerdy event in town, go to it. Or peruse those local shops.
Okay. Ashley asks, what would your thoughts be on making it a 2-day event? Would that make it easier for your volunteers and staff?
At this time, that is not something we're considering. I think
I I don't know
it's
that it
been
would be easier.
yeah, it's been a
We
lot to reserve those spaces even for just one day. I don't know that our branch managers would be thrilled if we did it for two.
we used to do our summer reading program for 2 days, and well, actually, we're going to be doing it for 2 days again this year. Huh.
But it's a lot of work, it's a lot of staff time. So for us, we feel like one day is great for our team. But I mean, that's definitely something to consider if that works out better for your team.
Yeah, and I mean, if you have a huge community for this, and a lot of people willing to help, but just not enough time or not enough space, you could turn it into a 2-day event, and it would still be, yeah, it would be twice the fun.
Sure.
Um, but I do think it
Um,
would also be twice the work. So I don't know that I would necessarily recommend it, especially for a first time uh, opportunity.
Brooke asks, do you think a story time event would be beneficial?
Well, and I think that when you're creating your mission statement for this event, I think that you really need to think about your target demographic. And when we were thinking about it in 2025, the the type of demographic we were targeting was teens and adults.
Mhm.
And because of that, we didn't really think about a story time. And we're trying to make it a little bit more family friendly this year by adding in those elements that are more leaning toward the child sort of deal.
I
And
do want to touch on that a little bit because we actually did leave our children's department at Maine alone. We didn't do anything in the children's department. They already had a therapy dog program going on where kids come and read to therapy dogs. And the therapy dogs kind of wore like little capes. So it wasn't like a big part of it, but it was just a little added touch that they wanted to bring into the mix. So I think if your target demographic includes children, that would be really fun.
One more question, but it could be long. So first I'm going to ask, do you guys have a couple minutes or do you have
Sure,
to
yeah,
run?
yeah.
yeah, no problem.
Okay, perfect. So Julie asks, I think this would be fun, but I have no knowledge, not a gamer. How do I find knowledgeable people?
I am gonna say one of the things that worked really well for Ben is one of those first events where he opened it up to dungeon masters and gamers so they could kind of just meet each other and connect.
Yeah.
And you'll find a lot of people self-identifying as, they like to run these kinds of games and they want to see that in your community. So even if you yourself don't know much about that world, they will tell you that they do. And then you can see if someone is interested in helping you craft this event moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I had one of those events that I'm hoping that other people can relate to, where I expected the event to be, you know, fine attended. I was thinking maybe 15 to 20 people. And then I had like 70 people come, and that event was what Kaylee was talking about. We didn't put it in this presentation, but the first ever Dungeons and Dragons event I ever had was just it was a game master and player meetup. And I was giving out free dice and free 3D prints since I run the makerspace. And we were way, 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 way too many people. I mean, my small makerspace that I have in here really can only comfortably hold like 20 to 25 people, and we had like 70. So we were shoulder to shoulder, spilling out into the rest of the library. And at that one event, I met, our local game shop, our local comic shop, and lots of volunteers that were really interested in this becoming a part of the community. And so having an event where I didn't really have to do anything, I basically just gave people free stuff and I said, you can meet each other. I met a lot of people there. And so just by starting doing some nerdy events, and then seeing who comes and just kind of talking to them and seeing if they would be interested in doing more in more events like this, and if they would be interested in assisting with that. You don't necessarily yourself need to be super knowledgeable of the community. Like for example, our head of our Rucheville branch is not a gamer at all, and yet she does all kinds of D&D events after the success that I've had here at our main branch. And those have become really popular. And the reason she's been able to do those and have them be successful is they actually have a volunteer that is really into the hobby and really interested in being a part of it. And so by having a volunteer that is really interested in helping, that kind of gave you that knowledge to be able to make these events. But again, I don't know that I would recommend doing LibraryCon as your first ever nerdy event. I would recommend nerdy events that lead up into doing something like this in the future.
Fully agree with that. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to stop the recording.